So today I have Jenny with me, and she is going to share her experience with ADHD, autism, and like neurodivergency in general. Yeah. So if you can start by maybe explaining a bit about who you are and like a little bit about your journey and your story.
Thank you so much for talking to me today. This is really exciting. So apologies if I get a bit enthusiastic when I'm talking. I find all this stuff so interesting and so fascinating. So hi, I'm Jenny. I am a late diagnosed ADHDer. So I'm on the autism spectrum and I have ADHD. And I'm also turning 40 this year. So I got my diagnoses, both of them in 2022 when I was 37. And although I had obviously put myself through the process of wanting to get assessed for it, when that happened, it was a bit of a bombshell moment because probably up to a couple of years later, neither of those things had been anywhere on the horizon on my radar in terms of my own personal experience and how I view the world and how I lived. So I was a secondary school music teacher for 16 years, and within that I did quite a lot of pastoral care. So I was a head of year or a head of house, depending on what situation that I worked in, and loved lots of my job. There's nothing like the light bulb moment of working with someone, whether that is children in the classroom or when you're coaching someone or just doing adult CPD. And there's that like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. Oh, I get it moment. Money can't buy that. And that is one of the things that I loved about teaching. But for anybody out there who loves a teacher or has lived with a teacher or is a teacher, that's not the end of the job. There are a million and one other things that come alongside being a teacher. In terms of the to-do list, it just never ends and it never stops. And I found that over time, I started my career before I met my husband, before I had a family. And as our relationship grew and we got married and had children and had a house to look after, the demands of having a full-time career and being all those other people outside of work were kind of overwhelming in a way where I actually remember thinking to myself at one point, I just don't think I'm cut out to work full-time, because it just felt like I couldn't do it all. I felt like I was really failing in some of those areas. So, I mean, that wasn't even a hint or a clue. And I have to say I did certainly feel a little bit ashamed and embarrassed, having come from the world of education and thinking that I knew what autism looked like and what ADHD looked like. And I didn't. My experience was boys, mostly boys, and boys on the autism spectrum who had sort of what you might, don't want to get my terminology wrong here, but obvious impediments in terms of communication or speech or, other learning disabilities that came alongside the autism. And so in some respects, there was like the stereotypical model of what autism looked like in boys. And ADHD boys are just the hyperactive little ones that are a bit naughty, aren't they?
And again, it goes back to that, like the way that it was portrayed back then, like, and then since advancements and like more knowledge and more education has been brought in around it, it gives that clarity. So it's that almost like that starting point, and that's why only like that like level was acknowledged almost.
Yeah.
And then as the years go on, the education gets deeper.
It's you're absolutely right, and doing things like this is brilliant because those stereotypes that I've just mentioned are still very much out there. They're still very much the sort of generalized norm in terms of, well, you can't have autism, you don't look like my 8-year-old nephew or my neighbour's kid, or there's that kind of, even still you will have professionals in a medical setting and other settings that will say, well, it can't be that bad because you've got a family and you've got a job and you can drive, and you can't be autistic, you can drive, you can hold eye contact. There's so many misconceptions out there about what autism is, how it affects people. One of my favorite things that people will say when we're talking about this is if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because it's a spectrum of different traits that some people feel more severely and other people don't have such issues with. So it really is very, like lots of things in life, it really is very individual to the individual in terms of how it shows up and how it can present.
I think that word, that individual word, is so important because, like you said, every element of life or every aspect of life is taken so individual, and if we can like portray things like that and look at it as an individual thing, it will make life so much like more, I don't know, what's the word, like accepting. And
Exactly.
it's, yeah, just having that, okay, that one word does not define one specific outcome. It is, like you said, along that whole spectrum.
Exactly. And it's interesting in terms of people have opinions on everything. If you've become a parent, suddenly everybody's an expert in parenting and gives you all the different advice about how you should do things, and it's normally all very conflicting. And it's the same if you are sharing your neurodiversity with people in terms of a diagnosis. That can make people feel very uncomfortable because they've got a stereotype in their head. But quite commonly, you'll see, especially if you're talking about children and getting children assessed, some people's opinion can be, well, why would you want to label them like that? Like a label is a limitation and it's somehow going to hold them back. And that is really, I mean, that we've had that within our own family in terms of our two daughters are also ADHD. And that sort of idea of, oh, why would you want to know more about that and investigate it? Don't tell them about their neurodiversity because it might hold them back. And I really struggle to wrap my head around that. I don't, in some respects. That's a fear response. Okay. People don't understand what it means to be neurodivergent and how that means that your whole world perspective is impacted by your neurology, the way that your brain is made up. And for me personally, once I kind of got over the overwhelm of this is life-changing news, why did I not already know this? How have I survived this long and not figured this out already? It explains a lot of things, and it helps to define how you live your life in terms of being able to accommodate yourself. And if there are things that you find really overwhelming or distressing, it's finding ways to navigate that, or ways to not necessarily avoid it, but just being aware. If you've got a nut allergy, you don't eat things that have got nuts in, because the extreme case is obviously it'll kill you. So you don't go, I'll just try a few of the peanuts and see if I can tolerate it now. You avoid it. You have to find strategies around not eating nuts. And if you've got, say, a sound sensitivity, which can be quite common on the autism spectrum, if you find loud, large, crowded places an issue and a bit draining, it's not to say that you're suddenly going to avoid crowds for the rest of your life, but you will put in accommodations to cope with that. You might choose to go places at a quieter time. You might have headphones in or noise cancelling earbuds or something that is going to help you navigate that situation. You'll be more aware of the fact that you find it quite tiring, so you might decide to build in some more breaks into, say, if you're going out for a day trip or whatever. It just allows you to understand what's going on in your body and your brain without shaming yourself for it and just feeling like a bit of a rubbish human.
It's totally, and that word again, awareness, like it's not a label, it's just having awareness, and then you can start to like exactly like you said, oh well, why do I do this, why is that always me? It's like, oh wow, okay, that makes sense now, so now I can put these factors into place. Now I can like switch that voice to that shame and guilt to, it's okay, this happens, this is like okay, and these are the things that you can do to help yourself in this situation.
Definitely. And when people talk about labels, you don't want to label people. We label people all the time. They're stupid or dramatic, or they're chaotic, they're disorganized, they're always running late, they don't care. We judge people anyway, whether we try not to or not. We label people in our own minds, and generally those labels are not very helpful or not very positive, and they're very blame orientated. So to have a label that explains things, even if it's just for that person, so that they can, like we said, just have some acceptance for themselves, that's really important, because you'll find that as sort of neurodiverse people, and it's, neurodiversity is a huge umbrella. My experience is autism and ADHD, but there's lots of other things that fall under it too. And it tends to be things that you'll struggle with will be things that people will criticize you for. So like, I've said there, you might always be running late, you might be disorganized, you might struggle to process words that people are saying to you initially, so you might need people to like repeat things or slow down when they're speaking. You might need to receive instructions in a different way, so you might need written instructions or whatever it is. And people are very quick to judge that those are like negative things about somebody, or you're just not trying hard enough. If you just listen harder, you'd get it. If you just wrote a to-do list, your life would be so much better. And there's some real misunderstandings about actually how these conditions present for people and the struggles that they have. But we're very quick to just judge that, oh, well, if they wanted to be here, they'd make an effort to get here on time. And that makes you just feel like the worst human being in the world.
Yeah, the more an individual can understand how all of these things come into play, and then allow that empathy for that person to understand, or like that perspective for that person to understand, okay, this is going to help them. This is going, like, so the turning up late. It's like, if you know someone's going to turn up late and it's a thing that they do like often because of like something, it's like, okay, well, we just put the time forward half an hour, so we allow for that. Like, so it's just accommodating and understanding and bringing empathy and perspective to things, isn't it? And that's what all of this allows. It allows people to understand things, that it's not a negative, it's just the way it is, and this is what we can do to help.
Definitely, absolutely that.
So when you said you had your diagnosis and it was like a life-changing, like, what was that experience like?
So it was, I went through the right to choose route. So for any sort of mental health conditions, you can go to your GP surgery and say that you would like to essentially choose the provider that gives you that assessment service, because in many parts of the country, NHS waiting lists for things like this are years long. So I went to my GP. I started seeing stuff probably in the media around about the Christmas of 2021 about ADHD in women and ADHD traits in women, and how they were different to what had been portrayed about little boys being a bit naughty and hyperactive, and how that as women sometimes we can internalize the hyperactivity part of ADHD. So, if you're looking at it and you're going, well, I don't sit and fidget all the time, or I don't feel restless all the time, or whatever the sort of stereotyped symptoms were, that actually can be internalized. So how fast is your mind moving all the time? Does your mind ever get a chance to catch a breath between the train of a million thoughts that you've got going on in there? That is a trait of hyperactivity, but just internalized. So I started to identify a little bit and think, oh, that sounds like me. Oh, I do that. And it made me curious enough to want to go and find out some more. So I went to my GP, took all the right to choose forms with me, because some GP practices are not too up on that route. And initially he was a little skeptical, but once I explained a little bit about what it was that I was experiencing, things that I'd seen, the reasons that I wanted to get an assessment just to see what was working for me, what wasn't, he quite happily filled in the referral and sent it off. And he actually said to me during the appointment, that was in the January, do you think you might also be autistic? And my initial reaction was, well, I can't be autistic. I'm talking to you and making eye contact with you, and I feel empathy for people. So no, I haven't considered autism. So he sent the referral off. I had lots of forms that I had to fill in to do the assessment from Psychiatry UK. My husband had to fill one in. I got my mum to fill one in, because they want a bit of background in terms of the whole you as a person and how other people view you, and the way that you behave. And then I had an appointment with a psychiatrist online, and it was actually quite a short appointment. It was less than an hour.
Okay.
And she went through the things in the questionnaire, asked me a few other questions, and then said at the end that she had come to the conclusion that I had inattentive ADHD. You can have hyperactive ADHD, which is where you are presenting more of that restless hyperactivity. Inattentive ADHD tends to be more of what you would class the daydreamer, always quite thoughtful, always away in the sort of thinking away in the clouds. But my scores weren't far off being combined ADHD, which is both inattentive and hyperactive, which is a bit of a contradiction. And my initial thoughts, and I actually said to her, I think she thought I was a bit nuts, to be honest. I said to her in the appointment, have I just convinced you that I've got ADHD? Do you really think I have ADHD? And I think she maybe thought I was questioning her professional credentials at that point, which was not my intention. But my initial thought was so sort of, I was in such disbelief that this could have been the right outcome, that I thought, I wonder if I've just said all the right things and I've ticked a box. And she looked at me and she was like, no, you've definitely got the symptoms for this. I'm diagnosing you with this. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. But there was that moment of sort of, okay, now what? And I come off the call and there was a sense of relief as well. Don't get me wrong. It was kind of like, oh, okay. It was right that I was resonating with those things that I saw before. Yeah. But now what do I do? And I had to actually wait a few months to get the report through from her, just sort of detailing the things that we had discussed in the appointment. But I didn't actually do very much with that information for a little while because I didn't really know what to do with it. I thought, oh, great, I've got this information. Now where do I go? And straight after that, I went back to the GP and asked to go for a referral for the autism assessment, because in I was lucky. There was 6 months between GP referral and getting the appointment with Psychiatry UK. The waiting list a lot longer than that now. But in that intervening time, in the way that the algorithms work, because I was looking at ADHD content online, I started to see more content about autism spectrum disorder in women. And I came across Samantha Craft's unofficial list of diagnostic traits of autism in women. And it's a list of hundreds of different ways that you can feel and present in various different situations as a potentially autistic woman. And reading through all of that, and I just got my highlighter out and I was like, oh yeah, I do that. Oh, I feel like that. And slowly I started to think, oh, hang on a minute. I think there might also be some autism here. And so that was a much quicker referral. It was a huge appointment, 3 hours long appointment with a psychiatrist. And he said, yes, you are on the autism spectrum. And that was more of a shock because I had such a stereotyped view of what autism looked like. And that took me, and it's still taken me time to digest what that actually means in my life 2 years later.
Okay. So from getting those like diagnosis, what like I know you said you didn't do anything with that information for the first couple of months, but like how has the last 2 years looked, and what's that journey looked like for you?
It's been absolutely fascinating, and it's been a journey for all of us as a family, because in that time both my children also got diagnosed with ADHD and my husband is also on the waiting list for an ADHD assessment. So it's kind of turned our world upside down in terms of understanding ourselves a little bit better. For me, I have gone through a bit of a period of readjustment and burnout in my life, because what I noticed was that once I had the information about being autistic and ADHD, it was almost like all of the traits just came flooding to the fore. And my husband actually said to me on several occasions, all right, you've got the diagnosis, but you don't need to like play up to it, you know. And I think it came about from the fact that it's almost like you have permission to outwardly experience the discomfort that I've been internally experiencing the whole time. And so some of those sort of, I have really sensitive hearing, which is ironic for having been a music teacher for such a long time. But I have hyperacusis, which basically means I hear frequencies that most other people don't hear. So if the conditions are right, I will hear the electricity buzzing in the walls. It's really annoying. It's not as cool as it sounds. But it means that became the first sensitivity that was overwhelming for me. Once it's almost like I had permission to feel the discomfort. Suddenly it was like, oh my God, I can't go anywhere where there's lots of people talking. Like crowded places became initially a real challenge. I was hearing everything all the time. And other little things about sort of sensitivities in terms of like heat sensitivity or feeling fabrics on my skin, food textures, like everything sort of, suddenly I became very autistic, I feel like.
It's almost like it's gone from the subconscious to the
Yes.
conscious.
Yeah, definitely. It just sort of all came to the forefront. But it was because I didn't have to suppress it anymore. And in all honesty, I didn't realize I was suppressing half of these things. And that's the scary thing. When people talk about masking and unmasking with autism and sort of trying to be your authentic self, I didn't realize how much I was masking in life, in social situations, in my own home. And for a while, it was really challenging in terms of my relationship with my husband, because it felt a little bit like all I was unmasking was like challenges. Like, oh, I'm finding this difficult now. Oh, I need more space. Oh, I need support with XYZ. And I felt like it was all negative.
Okay.
And that was really difficult. And it was really difficult for him, because it was like he was getting to know a different person than from who he first met and married and started this life with. And that was really tricky to navigate. And I think it was a necessary, because it was like, you've got to feel all the things before you can learn how to sort of balance all the things, accommodate the things, and then find comfortable ways to move through challenges and discomfort.
Yeah. Okay. So that again, it's the awareness, and then it's the like the acknowledging, and then how you said you started to portray these things. It's almost like that self-acceptance. It's that
Yeah.
self-acceptance, and oh wow, like I can release, and yeah. So that much of
that self-acceptance is the key thing, because quite a lot of the time, I mean, this is neurotypical and neurodivergent people, we do almost play a character when we're with other people. We want to be liked. And sort of tied up into that, for me personally, being a bit of a people pleaser, it was like I was almost like a different person with everybody that I met, because I just wanted people to like me. You know, I'm a good person, people should like me. And not really understand that actually not everybody's going to like me, and that's okay. Not everybody's supposed to like you. And therefore accepting that, and accepting who you are, and the fact that you will have challenges that other people don't have, and you'll need to navigate those. But it is possible to navigate them. Once you accept that the challenge is there, you can then start to find a way to accommodate it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, because I struggled with this with my husband as well, and he did a little bit with the children, in terms of he didn't ever want them to feel limited. He didn't ever want anything to sort of feel like they were holding them back, and that they weren't going to have the same opportunities as anybody else. And it's not about that. It's about knowing where the challenges are, and then finding ways to cope with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important.
Yeah, because again, with like, it's nothing is a limit, because the more information you find on that, the more ways you know how to overcome that challenge or that block that's in the way, or whatever it is.
Exactly. And it's knowing that if something is a challenge, you're going to have to maybe accommodate yourself a little bit more, in terms of, you know, nothing's stopping you from going to a festival for a weekend with your friends. Take your earplugs, like make sure you've got all your good snacks and things, but know that when you come back, you're probably going to feel more tired and need more rest and more downtime from having had that experience than other people would. And accepting that and accommodating for it means that you can just crack on and do it.
Yeah. So it's like that planning ahead, that scheduling in, right, okay, I'm going to hear this way. So self-care elements that I need to like have with me, and then that self-care afterwards that I'm going to need afterwards. And it's just scheduling it in like you would for anything else.
And having that awareness, so that you're not sort of like, because the alternative is obviously that you push through, that never ends well for anyone. Or that you're that negative self-talk, why can't I do this? I should be like everybody else. Nobody else is having to do all this. That means that I'm not a full human being, or I'm a burden, or, you know, all that sort of ruminating and self-talk actually doesn't doesn't get us anywhere. So just being able to have, as we've said a lot already, that acceptance is absolutely key to everything else.
Amazing. So when you just talked about the like those 2 years and the negatives that kept like showing up, like now that you've been through that process and that journey, what positives do you think has come out of this whole journey?
It's so interesting. I'm definitely in a very different place to even where I was this time last year. This time last year, I was deep in the depths of burnout, and it's come right back down to the very basics of acceptance. I am feeling exhausted. I cannot do all the things. That's it. Just baseline. That is the position that I find myself in, and so being able to acknowledge that. And then I'm lucky in the environment that I'm in that I've got my husband who can sometimes take on a bit of additional load in terms of the domesticity of a family. I was able to find, funnily enough, a video game to hyperfixate on for a little while, to just give my brain, it was just a nice, easy, simple role play game. And it gave my brain a little bit of a break from having to think about everything else. All I had to do was concentrate on the game. And that sounds really simplistic, but it's literally giving your brain a break. And through doing that and accommodating myself, not worrying too much about being on a diet and having to do all the things for all the people and make sure I was keeping up with the laundry and, all of the millions of life lists that we have, being able to just take that pressure off, even just a little bit. The clouds sort of start to part a little, and you start to regain a little bit more energy. And once I had started to regain a little bit more energy, I could go out and do some more exercise. And then it's like a snowball effect, isn't it? The more you can sort of look after yourself, the brighter things become. And so I now find myself in a position where I can do more of the things. My cognitive ability has returned in terms of being able to have these kinds of conversations again and think a bit more clearly. And I'm aware of some of the pitfalls that I fell into in order to be in that burnout. So I changed my working hours. So I now work flexi time and I have a Wednesday off in the week. That has made a real difference for me over the last academic year. I work from home. I don't teach anymore, but I work in the education department in our local authority. So I work from home. That's a big one. I have that brain break, if you like, in the middle of the week that works for me. And all those, it's just tiny little things that have made the difference for us as a family. My husband is more aware, he's learning, he's being more accepting, he's trying to balance his work and home life. And all those little things come together to mean that life is brighter. And actually the kids knowing about their spicy brains, and knowing that some of the challenges that they're going to have, it's really good for them. They're able to come and say, especially the little one now who's going to be 9 soon, is able to come and say, Mummy, I'm feeling really dysregulated, because she knows that something feels unsettled in her body. And then we can do an activity together, or we can talk about it to try and sort of navigate her nervous system back to feeling in a state of more calm and regulation. And just that awareness is so key for them, because even if they don't know what to do about it, they know that something's not quite right, and they know that they can come and get some support with that if they need it. But it's so important for them.
I think that word is as well, what you've just said, is support is so vital in not just this journey, but in life in general. Like having a support network, a support system to help navigate these areas is is key. So you're doing your teaching, and you're also on, like, you've got like a business helping others, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So on the side, when I was coming sort of, if you like, to the end of my teaching career, I was signed off work with what they classed as work related stress, but it was burnout. And I thought, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I know that there's hundreds of other people out there that are also finding the profession a real challenge at the minute. And so I started a business which was based around Reiki, actually, Reiki energy healing, because I was a Reiki level 2 at the time. Because my primary focus was, I don't want other people to feel like I do. And if they do, I want to try and help them out of it. And before they get to that point, I want to try and point them in the direction of support, so they don't get to the place that I have found myself in. And that has very much been the focus of the business, and it has changed. The nature of it has changed over time. I have done more coaching qualifications. I'm doing one at the minute on trauma-informed somatic coaching, which is looking more into the impact that trauma can have on your physicality, on your body, on your nervous system, and how, again, bringing awareness to the different states that your nervous system are in, and teaching yourself that situations that your nervous system might find dangerous aren't actually dangerous, like navigating large crowds or standing up and speaking in front of people. Sometimes our body perceives that as a life-threatening emergency.
Yeah, that fight or flight. Yeah,
that fight or flight, absolutely. So it's like retraining the nervous system. So I'm learning about that at the moment to bring that into my coaching practice. And I also I started a podcast this year. I just woke up one day in January and went, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a podcast. And that sort of typical ADHD, a new project, let's do this. And then spent ages making the titles and the artwork for it and stuff. So that's called Autism, ADHD and Us Three. And it's about navigating life as an ADHD parent with ADHD children. And that has just been so wonderful in terms of, you know, when you get someone that reaches out to you and goes, oh, I heard this thing that you said, and it really resonated with me. It really, you know, it was lovely to hear your story, because I thought, oh my gosh, that could be me saying that. And that was the whole point of putting the podcast out there. And I've got season 2 that's going to be coming out from September, again, talking about various different just life stuff in terms of living with a spicy family and navigating the world together. Because I want people to feel not alone. I want people to know that there's community out there. That has helped me. It's one of the things that helped me the most, was being on sort of all the various different types of social media and looking on Medium, which has got lots of different articles and things on it, and seeing other people having similar experiences to me and thinking, oh my God, it's not me. I'm not crazy. Like, other people are navigating this, and other people are navigating it, and they're a year ahead of me, and look at what they're doing now. Look at how they're coping. Look at all the strategies they've put in place. It was like inspiring to know that even though I felt in the depths sometimes of oh my God, how am I going to do this? It was nice to know that other people had also felt that and like moved through it too.
Moved through it, yeah.
So that is kind of, that's my role at the moment, is to be that person, because it is overwhelming when you get a diagnosis of something that you're potentially not expecting. And it's happening quite a lot now for parents, particularly of children who've got a diagnosis, and then suddenly it's like, well, hold on a minute, they do all the things that I do. Does that mean that I might also have XYZ? Although it's not just parents, but that I would say is the sort of fastest growing demographic of people that are discovering their neurodiversity later in life. And it is overwhelming, because you suddenly go, who am I then? Have I just been a mask this entire time? What is my personality? And you can feel very, very lost. So my job, if you like, is to help people overcome that negative self-talk. Stop blaming yourself for the way that your brain works, and to find that inner acceptance, and find ways that you can actually go on and thrive in life. So many of us are just surviving. And life's not about surviving, life's about living. And so I want to help people to live happily with their neurodiversity.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's an amazing thing. And like you just said there as well, there are so many stages to the journey. So there are going to be people that are going to take so much value from just hearing what you've just said here, because they're not where you are right now on your journey. Whereas you're taking value from so many people that are like past that stage of your journey right now. And it's just understanding that it is a journey. You're never going to have all the answers, and like learning to love the journey and grow with the journey is like so much value and so important. Yeah,
really, really important. I've really enjoyed talking about it. And you're right, and it is a journey. I don't know everything. I will never know everything. And I have my own personal lived experience, which is going to be different from somebody else's lived experience. But there's so many moments where you see somebody have a slightly different perspective on something, and you go, oh, wow, that's just totally opened my mind and changed everything for me.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It really is. And even if like those perspectives have a like that good impact on you, or even if you just take on board that perspective and as oh, I've never thought of it like that, that might be like, and it's just it's just a allowing it all in and taking what you want from it, and then just being aware of anything else from it.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining me today, and thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing your story.
God, thank you so much for having me here. It has been a real joy, and I hope it has been of use to you and to anybody else that's going to be sharing this with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.